How does one forgotten sock in our bedroom turn into a stack of legal papers with my name on every page? Why did my husband wait in silence, gather proof, and choose a lawyer's conference room instead of a screaming match at home? Can I still call him the bad guy when the only thing he did was follow the law and let that sock speak for him? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Isolde Varin, and I know people will say, I am the bad one in this story. They will say, I ruined a good man and a good family. They will not understand that I was already trapped long before anything happened with Jace. They will not see the small cuts, the boredom, the years of feeling like a piece of furniture in my own home. They will only see one sock and think it tells the whole truth. That day started like many days when Daniel was at work and Marco was at school. The apartment was quiet and bright. I had done the dishes, wiped the counters, folded a basket of laundry that somehow never left our bedroom chair. I checked the time and saw that I still had hours until Daniel's normal return. It looked like any calm weekday, but for me, it was my small window of freedom. Jace texted that he was on his way over. He said he had a gap between clients at the gym and he wanted to see me. I told him to come up, that the door was open, that I needed attention from someone who still knew I was alive. I watched myself type those words and thought they were true. My husband cared about bills, school emails, his code, not about me. That is how I saw it, and I still think there is some truth in that. When Jace came in, he moved like he always did, with easy energy, like rules did not quite apply to him. He smelled like soap and that faint gym spray. I liked that he looked at me first, not at a screen, not at a clock. He asked how my morning was. I told him I was bored and lonely. He laughed and said he could fix that. It felt simple. It felt like the universe was finally giving me something back. I will not give details because that is not the point, and honestly, it was not even the best time we had together. It was fast, clumsy, half on, half off the bed. The important thing is how I felt. For a short hour, I was not just a mother, not just a wife cooking dinners and being told I spent too much on coffee. I was a woman someone wanted. I told myself I deserved that, after years of Daniel being distant, after all the nights when he chose his laptop over me. We were still catching our breath when I heard the sound that froze my spine. The front door opened and closed. It was the quick, firm way Daniel always shut it. I heard keys hit the bowl by the door, the familiar clink. My first thought was that he should not be home. My second thought was that this was his fault somehow, for not staying at work like he usually did. I hissed at Jace to move. I told him Daniel was back early and that he had to hide. He looked at me like this was a joke. Then he heard Marco's old cartoon theme song that Daniel used as a ringtone, and his face changed. I shoved clothes at him. I said that Daniel was paranoid, that he would lose his mind if he saw us, that we just needed 2 minutes. I pulled Jace off the bed and pointed under it. He squeezed himself down there, still half-dressed, muttering that this was crazy. I said he was overreacting and that my husband would not even look under the bed. I believed that. I also needed to believe it. Daniel called my name from the hallway. I said I was in the bedroom. I forced my voice to sound casual. I was still in a long t-shirt, hair messy, sheets a bit twisted. I yanked the covers up with my foot like I was just tidying. I told him I had been doing stretches and a short nap. He walked in and looked around. He asked why the bedroom door had been locked. I said I needed quiet, that even at home I could not get a moment without someone asking for something. He apologized for coming back early, in that calm way of his that always felt like a lecture. He explained that a meeting got cancelled and he thought he would surprise me. I told him surprises stressed me out and that next time he should send a message. He frowned a little at that. I saw his eyes move over the room, to the slightly open window, to the laundry basket, to the pair of men's shoes Jace had kicked under the curtain and somehow pulled back into the light with his foot when he slid under the bed. My heart stopped when I saw one shoe poking out. I shifted, blocking his line of sight, and bent like I was checking the basket. When I straightened, the shoe was hidden again. I told him he was making it hard for me to relax, that I never got time alone, that this was why I was always tense. He said he did not want to bother me, he just missed me. I told him that if he really missed me, he would help more with the house and stop criticizing my mood. I watched his face shut down a little. We moved to the kitchen. He asked if I wanted coffee. I said he could make it if he wanted to help. I acted annoyed and tired, but mainly I was buying time. I listened for the bedroom door or a floor creak, but Jace stayed still. Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter. A calendar alert flashed on the screen for a second. I saw a small note that said, "Meeting personal," with a time in the late morning 2 days later. I didn't care what it was. At that point, I was just glad for anything that pulled his eyes away from me. After a few minutes, I told Daniel I needed a shower. I said I felt sticky and gross and that he was hovering. He said he would start some emails for work at the table. I walked back down the hallway, every step heavy. I slipped into the bedroom and hissed at Jace to get up. He crawled out, annoyed and amused at the same time. He said my husband seemed calm for someone who almost walked in on us. I said he always buried feelings, and then used them against me later. I told Jace it was proof that Daniel did not really care. I pushed Jace to dress fast. He pulled on his pants and grabbed his shirt, but in the rush one sock slid under the bed and stayed there. I did not see it then. I only saw my own panic. I kissed him once, hard, and told him to wait by the door until Daniel went back to his laptop. I made the shower run for show, then padded past Daniel with a towel on. I said I did not want Marco to hear us talk and get worried, so I would nap after. Daniel nodded and went back to typing. Jay slipped out when Daniel got up to refill his mug. It was quick, almost smooth. For a moment, I believed we had pulled it off. I believed I was smart enough to handle 2 lives at once. I lay on the bed later, wrapped in a robe, feeling pleased with myself, like I had won a game no one else could play. It was only that evening, when Daniel carried the laundry basket to the bed, that everything tilted a little. He reached under the frame to pull out a shirt that had fallen. His hand came up with a single black athletic sock, larger and thicker than his own. He turned it over in his fingers. He said it was not his. I reached for it and said it was old, from some time when Helena's friend stayed over. He did not argue. He just looked at me for a long second, then placed the sock on top of his dresser, smooth and flat, like it was something important he needed to remember. The next morning, the sock was still on his dresser. It sat there beside his watch and his wallet, like it belonged. I saw it when I came in with fresh laundry. I pretended not to notice, but of course I did. Every time I walked past, my eyes went to it. It felt like a small, stupid enemy. Daniel stood at the dresser, buttoning his shirt for work. He picked up the sock between 2 fingers. He turned it, slow, like it was a puzzle. He said again that it was not his. I rolled my eyes. I told him he already asked me about it, and that I told him it must be from when Helena and her on-again boyfriend stayed over. I said not everything in the house had to mean something. He asked when that was, what month. He said he did not remember anyone else using our room. I gave him a tired look. I said of course he did not remember, because he never pays attention when my family visits. I said he goes into his work cave and only comes out to eat. I made a small joke about that. He did not laugh. He put the sock down, still looking at it. He said he was just confused, that it stood out. I snapped that it was just laundry, not a crime scene. I could hear my own sharp tone, but I told myself he deserved it for poking at me first thing in the morning. I told him his suspicion was why I felt so on edge all the time. He apologized in that quiet way he has. He said he did not mean to accuse me. He just liked things to be clear. I told him if he wanted things clear, he could start cleaning the kitchen after dinner, instead of asking me about socks. I told him I was tired of being judged for every little thing. That part felt good to say. It made me feel like I was the strong one, pushing back. He checked the time on his phone. Another calendar alert flashed for a second. Meeting personal again, now with a room number. I saw it without trying. He did not notice me looking. He tapped it away and said he had to go early. He kissed the top of Marco's head at the table and said he would be home around 7. He asked if I was still going to brunch with Mila. I said yes, and I added that I needed girl time because life at home was heavy right now. He asked if everything was that bad. I told him if he had to ask, he had not been listening. Then I turned away like I was done. He picked up his laptop bag, glanced once at the sock, and left it where it was. After he went to work and Marco went to school, the apartment felt wide and empty again. I looked at the sock on the dresser and felt my chest tighten. I considered throwing it out. I even picked it up and walked halfway to the trash. Then I stopped. Part of me was annoyed that this dumb piece of cloth had this power. I told myself that if I threw it out now, it would look guilty. I set it back down on the dresser, right where it had been, like it was a test. If Daniel wanted to obsess, that was his choice. I decided I would not let him make me feel like a criminal over nothing. At brunch, the cafe was loud and bright. Big windows, small plants on tables, music just loud enough to make you lean in. Mila was already there with her big sunglasses and messy bun, waving her phone like she had been waiting for drama. Leo sat beside her, scrolling something, looking like he would rather be anywhere else but also too kind to say it. Mila hugged me and said I looked tired. I told her I lived with a man who treated socks like FBI evidence. She laughed hard and asked what happened. I felt the warm attention on me. I liked it. I told them the story, but I shaped it my way. I said Daniel came home early, marched straight into the bedroom, and started going through laundry like a detective. I said he held up this random sock like it was a smoking gun, and started asking who it belonged to, what day it appeared, whether it matched any of our guests. I waved my hands and rolled my eyes while I spoke, adding little details. I left out the only part that mattered, the part where Jace crawled under the bed. Mila gasped and said that was insane. She said he sounded controlling and weird. She asked if he ever checked my phone or followed me. I said not yet, but he was getting more suspicious. I said he did not trust me when I told him where I had been. I did not say that I often lied about where I had been. Leo cleared his throat. He asked if Daniel had actually yelled or just asked. He said that sometimes when something new appears in a small space, it is normal to be curious. I gave him a sharp look. I said Leo always defended men, and that he was missing the point. I said it made me feel like a suspect in my own home. That phrase sounded smart in my mouth, so I repeated it. Mila put her hand on mine and said I deserved better than to be treated like that. She said if he was that paranoid, maybe he was hiding something himself. I smiled at that idea. It took all the guilt off me and put it on Daniel. I said maybe he was projecting, maybe he had a secret. The thought felt safe. If he was guilty, then I was just balancing things out. We ordered pancakes and coffee and took photos of our plates. Mila told me to do a fake sad face, then caption the picture on her story with a line about girls who stay soft even when their men go crazy over laundry. She tagged me. I laughed, but for a second I imagined Daniel seeing it. Then I told myself he never checked social media anyway. Helena called while we waited for food. I told her about the sock in a lowered voice. I said he was acting like I had another man hidden in the closet. She burst out laughing. She said if I was going to cheat, I should at least do it with someone who did not leave their clothes behind. I told her to shut up, but I was laughing too. I told her she was bad for me. She said I loved it. Leo watched us, his jaw tight. He finally said maybe it would be better to just throw the sock away and let it go. He said dragging it out would only make Daniel feel more crazy and defensive. I shrugged. I said if Daniel wanted to act like a lunatic over a sock, That was his problem. I said I would not walk on eggshells just because he was insecure. Inside, though, I liked the story too much. It was a neat little tool. It made me the poor wife dealing with a suspicious husband. It made my affair with Jace feel more like a reaction than a choice. If Daniel was the paranoid villain, then I could be the wounded heroine, pushed into the arms of someone who actually looked at me. Mila asked if I had told Daniel he was making me think about leaving. I said no, not yet, but maybe I should. She said that would scare him and make him behave. Leo said it might also break him. I said men needed to learn that actions have consequences, meaning his questions, not my cheating. By the time the plates were empty, the sock had turned into a shared joke. Mila kept calling Daniel Detective Laundry. Helena sent a voice message saying my life was like a sitcom. I let them talk. I let them take my side. Every laugh made it easier to believe my own version. When I walked back into the apartment that afternoon, Daniel's shoes were by the door. He was home early again. The air felt tight. From the hallway, I could see the bedroom. The dresser was in its place. On top, neat and alone, the black sock waited, more visible than ever, like it refused to be turned into only a joke. Ruth's backyard smelled like charcoal and cut grass. The sun was gentle, not too hot, and there were folding chairs spread around the big wooden table. Fairy lights hung from the fence even though it was still afternoon. It looked like one of those simple, happy family days other people post online. I kept thinking how fake those posts were, and how this one would be fake too. Ruth had invited us for a small barbecue. She said she wanted to see Marco and try a new marinade. I knew she also wanted to look at me and Daniel together and check if things were normal. Mothers-in-law can smell tension better than smoke. I told myself I would act relaxed, so she would not have anything to gossip about. At the same time, a small ugly part of me wanted her to see that her son was not the perfect husband she thought. Daniel carried the salad bowl in from the car, while I walked in front of him with the dessert box. Marco ran ahead, shouting that he could smell burgers. Ruth came out from the kitchen with an apron on and wiped her hands. She greeted Daniel first, hugged him, then hugged me. I noticed the order and felt a sting. I told myself it meant she loved him more and that I was the outsider. We settled in the yard. Ruth asked if anyone wanted lemonade. Daniel said he would help with the grill. I said I would sit down because I had done the prep at home. It was not even much, but I liked to say it anyway, to remind everyone how much I did. Ruth just smiled and handed me a glass. Leo and Mila arrived a little later. Mila waved and shouted that she had brought chips and gossip. She came straight over to sit next to me. Leo went to stand by Daniel at the grill for a moment, making small talk. I watched them and wondered what they were saying. I told myself Daniel was probably complaining about me, making me the bad guy. Ruth asked Marco about school, and he started telling her about a project with paper planets. I half listened. My eyes kept going back to Daniel. He moved slowly, turning the meat, listening mostly, not talking much. I thought he looked boring, like a background extra in a movie. I told myself that was why I needed someone like Jace, someone with spark. At one point, Ruth mentioned that Daniel had always been careful with details, even as a boy. She said he would line up his toy cars in perfect rows and notice if one was missing. She laughed gently when she said it. I felt my body stiffen. I could see the opening in the conversation. It was too easy. I told her that he was still like that and that it was becoming a problem. Everyone looked over. Mila leaned in, ready for a story. Ruth asked what I meant. I said that he had started checking the house like some kind of inspector, that he had made a scene over a random sock he found in our laundry basket. Ruth blinked, confused. She asked if she had heard me right. I explained that he had picked up this old black athletic sock and had started asking who it belonged to. When it appeared, whether anyone else had stayed in our room. I said he kept repeating that it was not his, like he thought I had a secret man living in the closet. I used a light tone, like it was a funny story, but there was a sharp edge under my words. Mila covered her mouth and made a small laugh. She said that sounded obsessive. She asked if he really went through our laundry. I said he had almost emptied the basket on the bed, acting like a detective. I said I half expected him to pull out gloves and a magnifying glass. The more I spoke, the more I enjoyed it. Each word made Daniel look smaller, more ridiculous. Daniel turned from the grill. He said in a calm voice that he had not done all that. He said he had only picked up one sock and asked where it came from because it did not match any of his. He said he never raised his voice. He did not sound angry. That made it worse for me because it made me sound like I was inventing things. I shrugged and told everyone that he was rewriting the story to make himself look better. I said he had a way of forgetting the parts where he made me feel crazy. I said he would walk around the bedroom, checking corners, asking if someone else had been there. Ruth watched his face. He did not argue. He just turned back to the grill. Leo asked gently if maybe it was just a misunderstanding, and he wondered out loud if maybe the sock had fallen out of some old bag or something. I shot him a look and said he sounded just like Daniel. I said the point was not the sock, but how Daniel made me feel, like a suspect. Mila nodded and told Ruth that I had been stressed, that I kept saying she felt watched. Ruth did not answer right away. She stirred the bowl of salad and kept her voice even. She asked Daniel if he had really gone through my things. He said he had not. He said he had only asked a question. He said something felt off, and he wanted to understand. I laughed and told her that was his line, that everything was always about his feeling and never about mine. Lunch went on. People took plates and sat scattered around. Marco sat by his grandfather's old chair, making his burger talk like a puppet. It should have been a nice moment. Instead, I could feel the invisible lines in the yard. Who believed me? Who believed him? At one point, Marco came to sit beside me. He tugged my sleeve and asked why Daddy thought I lied. He said he had heard something like that in the kitchen when Ruth and Daniel were talking. My chest tightened. I smoothed his hair and told him that Daddy was just stressed from work and sometimes said things he did not mean. I said adults get confused and make mistakes. I did not say that I had made the first mistake. Later, while I was in the kitchen helping Ruth clear dishes, she asked in a quiet voice if everything was okay between us. She said she had noticed Daniel was more quiet than usual. I told her he was always quiet, and that I was tired of carrying all the emotional weight. I said he spent more time with his laptop than with me. I said that if he really loved me, he would trust me and stop inventing stories about socks. I could see her face change. She was not fully on my side, but I knew I had planted doubt. She told me that Daniel had always been serious, and that sometimes serious people worry. She said it did not mean he did not love me. I answered that worrying did not give him the right to make me feel guilty. I said I had done nothing wrong. I believed that sentence as I spoke it, because I had already decided that the affair did not count in the same way. To me, it was separate, like another life. When the sun started to go down, we got ready to leave. Daniel carried Marco's backpack and thanked his mother for the food. I went to get my bag from the front hall table. As I reached for it, my phone lit up. A message preview showed from Jace. He had sent a joke about the sock, saying it would be easier next time if he just hid in the closet. He also wrote that I still had his other sock. For a second, I froze. The words sat there on the screen, bright and simple. Daniel walked past behind me to open the front door. I tilted the phone down so the light did not show too much. The message disappeared as the screen dimmed, but I could not be sure what he had seen. My heart thumped in my ears. I told myself that even if he had seen the name and the word sock, he would sound crazy if he brought it up in front of everyone again. In the car on the way home, Marco fell asleep in his seat. The road lights made moving shadows on Daniel's face. He drove in silence, his jaw tight. I looked at his hands on the wheel and told myself he was angry because he could not control the story anymore. In truth, I think now he was quiet, because he finally saw the whole shape of it, and he was already starting to decide what to do. I did not see that then. I only saw myself, sitting in the passenger seat, feeling both powerful and strangely nervous at the same time. On Monday, the office felt like a different planet from Ruth's backyard. Bright lights, open space, people walking by with coffee cups and headsets. At home, things were heavy and quiet. Here, everything felt like movement and noise. I liked that. It made it easier to pretend there was no sock, no look on Daniel's face in the car, no tension in the kitchen when we got home. I sat at my desk and opened my email. My inbox was full of small tasks, schedules, reports, a client asking for a last-minute change. I did them almost on autopilot. My real focus was on my phone, face down next to the keyboard. I kept waiting for it to buzz. Mila stopped by my desk and leaned on the divider. She asked how the barbecue went. I told her Daniel was still being weird and quiet, and that I could tell his mother was trying to figure out whose side to take. Mila rolled her eyes and said in-laws always choose their sons. I said I knew that, which was why I needed my own people. I meant her. I liked giving her that role. It made her more loyal. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Jace, asking how my day was, and if I could come by the gym later. He said he had a gap between clients. He added a small comment about missing me, and something about the bed situation. My cheeks warmed. I typed back that I might stop by, but I had to see what time Daniel would be home. I told myself that at least I was honest there, in a way. I was planning around my husband's schedule. I felt like a smart planner, not a liar. At lunch, Mila and I ate in the break room. She talked about some office drama. I listened with half an ear. My mind was on the gym. I checked Daniel's shared calendar on our home app. He had added a note that he would be working late 2 nights that week. I took that as a green light. If he could make his own plans without asking, why could I not do the same? In the afternoon, Daniel sent me a short message asking if I could pick up Marco on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, because he had something in the evening. The message was simple and polite. I read it like it was one more sign that work came before us. I agreed, but I added a line saying I was tired of always adjusting my time. He replied that he appreciated it and that he would make it up to me. I scoffed quietly. Make it up how? Another quiet evening with him staring at his laptop. After work, I drove to the gym. The parking lot was half full. The sun was low and made long shadows on the concrete. Jace came out the side door in a bright t-shirt and shorts, wiping his face with a towel. He smiled in that easy way that made me feel like I was the only person he wanted to see. He asked how the family dinner went. I told him it was tense and annoying, and that Daniel still had that sock sitting on the dresser like a trophy. Jace laughed and said we should burn it. He said I should tell Daniel it belonged to some cousin and be done with it. I told Jace that Daniel was starting to act strange. I said he was more quiet than usual, sleeping in the guest room, making notes. Jace shrugged and said that many guys talk big and do nothing. He said Daniel would never really leave, that he was too comfortable. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe I was safe, that the worst he would do was sulk. We sat in my car for a little while, talking. He rested his arm on the back of my seat. He told me I was too good for a man who did not appreciate me. I told him I felt seen when I was with him. I talked about all the ways Daniel failed me, all the nights he fell asleep early, all the times he made small comments about my spending. I did not talk about the times he held Marco when he had nightmares, or the mornings he made me coffee. Those did not fit the story I needed. Before he went back inside, Jace looked at my phone screen. Daniel had sent another message asking what time I would be home. Jace raised an eyebrow and said my husband seemed to be checking up on me a lot. I said that was what controlling men did. I did not admit that Daniel's message was simple and neutral. I twisted it in my mind until it fit. When I got home, the apartment felt colder. Daniel's shoes were by the door, lined up neatly. In the hallway, I noticed the guest room door was closed. That was new. He usually left it open. I set my bag down and walked into the kitchen. Daniel sat at the table with his laptop open, a notebook beside it. There was a half-finished cup of tea near his hand. He looked up and asked how work had been. I said busy. I asked why he was home early. He said his meeting had moved, and he decided to finish his work at home. His voice was even. I could not tell if he was angry or not. That made me nervous, which annoyed me. I told him it would be nice if he told me when plans changed, so I did not walk into surprises. He nodded and said he would try. I glanced at his laptop screen. There was a spreadsheet open, rows of dates and small notes. Before I could read them, he tilted the screen away slightly. He said he was sorting out some household costs and checking old charges. I said it was funny that he cared more about numbers than about my feelings. He did not answer that. He just wrote something down in his notebook. Later that night, after Marco went to bed, I went to our bedroom. The sock still sat on the dresser. It looked like an accusation, even though it could not speak. I snatched it up and walked to the living room, planning to throw it away in front of Daniel to make a point. I held it up and said I was done being judged by a piece of cloth. Daniel looked at it and then at me. He said calmly that if the sock made me uncomfortable, I could put it somewhere else. He said it did not matter. He said what mattered was how we were with each other. His tone was too calm, too flat. It did not sound like peace. It sounded like something had already broken. That scared me more than yelling would have. For a second, I thought about telling him everything. I imagined saying that I was lonely, that Jace made me feel alive, that the sock was his. In my head, it almost made sense, because I believed I had good reasons. But then I imagined Daniel's face, Ruth's face, Marco's confusion. I imagined losing the apartment and having to start over. My fear turned into anger. I told myself this was his fault for making me feel cornered. I tossed the sock on the coffee table instead and went to get ready for bed. When I passed the guest room, I heard the soft click of the lock turning. I stopped. I realized he was inside, not in our bed. That stung. Sleeping apart felt like a punishment, like he was the one leaving me. I told myself he was dramatic. I told myself he wanted me to beg him to come back. In our room, I lay down alone and stared at the ceiling. I thought about Jace's easy smile and Mila's laughter, about how they made me feel important. I thought about Daniel's calm voice and his spreadsheet. The two worlds did not fit together, but I kept trying to force them to. I told myself that as long as I played my part well, as long as I told a strong enough story, I could keep both. I did not see that the other story, the one Daniel was building in quiet lines and dates, was already stronger than mine. When Mila asked if we could come over for game night, I said yes before checking with Daniel. I did it on purpose. I told myself that if he cared, he would say something. If he did not, that was his problem. I was tired of walking around his moods and his quiet. I wanted people, light, noise, something that felt normal. I told Daniel about it while he was cutting vegetables in the kitchen. I said Mila and Leo were having a few people over, just cards and drinks. I said it would be good for us to get out, to show everyone we were fine. He paused with the knife in his hand. He asked if I really thought we were fine. I answered that everyone had problems, and that we did not have to be dramatic about ours. I said it in a brisk voice, like the conversation was already over. He nodded once, and said if Marco could come, we could drop him at Ruth's first. It annoyed me that he stayed so calm. I almost wanted him to say no, so I could accuse him of isolating me. At Mila and Leo's condo, the living room was warm and crowded. Soft music played from a speaker. There were bowls of chips, bottles of wine, and a stack of board games on the coffee table. The windows showed the city lights outside. I felt lighter right away. Here I could be the fun version of myself, not the woman who lay awake listening to a guest room door lock. Mila greeted us loudly and hugged me. She said she was happy we both came. She gave Daniel a quick side hug too, then pulled me into the kitchen to show me her new glassware. She whispered that she had updates on some co-workers' breakup. I laughed and let myself sink into the gossip. Behind me, I could hear Leo asking Daniel how work was going. Their voices were low and steady, like background noise. We all sat down around the table. There were 6 of us, me and Daniel, Mila and Leo, and another couple from their building. The game they chose involved answering cards with questions about relationships and then guessing what other people would say. It was the kind of thing that can turn harmless or nasty very fast. I felt a little thrill. I knew how to use that kind of game. The question started soft. Who says I love you first in your relationship? Who takes longer to get ready? People laughed and pointed. Then we drew a card that asked, who is more likely to snoop through their partner's phone or things? Mila clapped and said this was a good one. Leo read the card out loud again, and everyone wrote down names. My heart sped up. There was only one way this could go. When it was time to reveal, Mila shouted my name and Daniel's name together, then laughed. She said she had a story that proved it. She looked at me and asked if she could tell the sock story. She did not even wait for my answer. She started telling everyone about how Daniel had had a full meltdown over a random sock in our laundry. She described him as marching around, holding up the sock like a bomb, asking where it came from, checking corners. She painted a picture that was half true and half her own drama. At first, I smiled and played along. I added a few lines. I said he had looked under the bed, in the closet, everywhere, like he expected a man to jump out. I rolled my eyes and called him Detective Laundry. The others laughed, especially the new couple who did not know us well. I saw Daniel's jaw tighten, but he did not interrupt. When the laughter died down a little, he spoke. He said he had just picked up the sock and asked a question. He said he had never shouted or searched the house. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. It annoyed me. I felt like he was calling me a liar without using the word. I said he was minimizing. I said he always made me look crazy after the fact, like my feelings were wrong. The woman from the other couple glanced between us. She asked softly if maybe it was just misunderstanding. Leo shifted in his seat. He said we all exaggerate when we tell stories. He added that, from what he had seen, Daniel was usually pretty calm. It was a simple comment, but it felt like betrayal. Leo was supposed to be neutral, or at least quiet. I shot him a sharp look. I decided to push further. I said maybe I should actually give Daniel something to find if he kept acting like a detective. I smiled as I said it, like it was a joke, but there was weight behind the words. The room went still for a second. Mila laughed, but it sounded thinner. The other couple looked uncomfortable. Daniel kept his eyes on the game cards. He said, still in that same calm voice, that threats like that were not funny. He said trust was either there or it was not. I said trust went both ways, and that he had started this by acting like I was hiding someone in our closet. I did not care that I was talking in circles. I wanted to win the moment, not the logic. We switched games after that, but the mood had shifted. The questions still came, but people laughed less loudly. I saw Leo watching me with something like worry. At one point, he pulled Daniel aside to help him bring in more drinks from the kitchen. I stayed in the living room with Mila and the others. Mila whispered that Leo was being judgmental. I said he had no idea what it was like to live with a man who walked around the house counting socks. I made Daniel sound like a stranger. When Daniel came back, he said he needed to leave soon to pick up Marco from Ruth's. It was earlier than we had planned. I protested. I said the night had just started and that Ruth would not mind keeping him longer. Daniel said Marco had already been there for hours and needed his own bed. His voice stayed even. It irritated me deeply that he would not rise to the bait. On the way out, in the hallway of the building, I started another fight. I told him he had embarrassed me by being cold in front of our friends. I said he made me look like a crazy wife for no reason. He listened without interrupting, which only made me push harder. I said if he kept acting like this, he was going to drive me away for real. He stopped by the elevator and looked at me. For the first time in days, he held my eyes for more than a second. He said, in a very calm tone, that he was done fighting in front of people. He said he would not argue about socks or stories anymore. He said from now on, he would handle things properly and through the right channels. He added that I would get all the information I needed in writing. The elevator doors opened. He stepped in and held them with his hand. I stood there, speechless for once. His words did not sound like a threat, but they also did. They sounded like a plan, solid and already in motion. I told myself he was just being dramatic, trying to scare me. I told myself he would cool down in a day or two, and we would go back to our strange normal. That night, after Marco was in bed, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his laptop again. I watched TV in the living room, scrolling my phone, half waiting for him to come and apologize. He did not. Instead, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from our shared address, his name clearly in the sender line. The subject read, "Meeting about home and Marco, Tuesday 3 p.m. There was a calendar invite attached with an address downtown I did not recognize. I stared at it for a few seconds. I almost laughed. A meeting, like we were co-workers. It felt cold, too formal. I told myself he was overreacting. I clicked accept anyway, just to show I was not afraid. Then I put the phone face down and turned up the TV, pretending the tight feeling in my chest was only annoyance, and not the first real sign that my story was no longer the only one. On Tuesday afternoon, I take the elevator to the 6th floor of the glass building downtown, still telling myself this is some kind of counseling meeting. The hallway smells like coffee and printer toner. A sign on the wall says, "Family Law," in small silver letters. My stomach flips. Daniel is already in the conference room when I walk in. He is sitting at the table, hands folded, no laptop. Next to him is a woman in a dark blazer with a neat folder open. She stands and says her name is Ms. Jenner. She says she's a family lawyer. Her voice is calm and firm, like Ruth's when she talks to patients in old stories. I sit down slowly. I say, I thought this was to talk things out. Daniel says we are talking, just in a structured way. Ms. Jenner slides a stack of papers toward me. On top, clipped neatly, is a printed photo of the black sock on our dresser. I feel heat rush to my face. I say this is ridiculous, that it is just a sock. Ms. Jenner nods and says the sock alone is not the issue. She turns a page. There are screenshots of messages between me and Jace, including the one where he jokes about hiding under the bed and says I still have his other sock. There are door camera stills with times and dates. There is a calendar of nights when Daniel was at work and Jace came by. She explains that Daniel has filed for divorce. She says there is a request for temporary orders. He will stay in the apartment with Marco most of the time. I will have specific days and weekends. The joint accounts will be frozen and divided by the court. She adds that my public comments about Daniel's meltdowns and insanity are included, and that if I continue to spread false stories, they may file a separate complaint. I stare at the top page, at our names above the words "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." The photo of the sock fixed there, like a label on my life, while Daniel stands and tells me he will communicate by email from now on, and walks quietly out of the room.